Welcome back guys to another episode on this channel, The Fitness Enthusiast. Today's topic, I'm going to be talking about carbohydrates and different types of carbohydrates and sugars, since it has been a part of these carbohydrates. Okay, one of the components, sugar is one of the components that comprises this carbohydrate. Okay, so without wasting any time, let's just get started with it. Okay, so what is really a carbohydrate, right? As we have already been known to this point, since if you are not knowing into this point, you can go and watch my videos which I've posted a couple of days back, right? It was a video about macronutrient, right? And carbohydrate is one of the macronutrients. And here we're talking, it's much more in detail how exactly it impacts and how different types of carbs. Okay, and of course the sugar profile in carbohydrates, right? So how do you adjust and how do we make use of those carbohydrates in our day-to-day life to get the best out of it? Okay, carbohydrates are of two types. One is simple carbohydrates and another is complex carbohydrates. Simple carbohydrates are the carbohydrates, pretty much the monosaccharides and the disaccharides. So let's talk about monosaccharides. Monosaccharides consisting of one molecule of glucose, right? Disaccharides, on the other hand, is combinations of monosaccharides, right? More than one monosaccharides combined together to bring disaccharide, right? Which is the typical example of it. It's gonna be sucrose, right? So sucrose is a one type of sugar, okay, which is a disaccharide, constitutes of more than one monosaccharides, namely glucose and fructose. Okay, and apart from these we have lactose, okay, maltose. There are a couple of others also, right? Simple carbohydrates, which can be monosaccharides or disaccharides. Okay, why this is, and what is the benefits it brings? It actually doesn't give a much of a benefit compared to the complex carbohydrate, right? It just increase your insulin spike. Okay, so your blood sugar level will be easily get up by consuming this for a window, and again it will drop back, because more blood sugar level in your system means more insulins to be released from your pancreas to maintain your blood sugar level in your bloodstream. Okay, so for that, simple sugars are quite bit avoided. Okay, for a time it's been avoided, okay, to an extent. I'm not saying that you are completely outside of that. We are supposed to outside of this simple carb things, but I'm just saying it's not that much prevalent when it comes to consumption of carbohydrate, to take one over another. So my get-to-go meal, it's always been like complex carbohydrate. I'm a big believer of those complex carbohydrate, okay? Because of course we are getting sugars, but alongside with sugars, we're getting other nutrients like fiber and starch, so which is get into your stomach for longer, and you would remain full for longer. So less amount of meal would be consumed over time, which would benefit you for a longer run, right? And simple sugar is not that bad if you are taking the simple sugar from the natural food, simple carbohydrate sources like fruits, bananas, raisins. Okay, these are the sugars that you are getting from those carbs. Of course, you're getting some fiber, but the fiber is more likely to be less compared to the complex carbs. But when the sugar you are getting, these are the simple carbs, simple sugars, right? Simple sugars, okay, combinations of fructose and fructose and glucose, which is again be converted into glucose, because at the end of the day body would only consume glucose. So even if you are getting some simple carbohydrates and the sugar you are finding is sucrose, so for that sucrose to convert it into your glucose, it will take a little bit of time than the simple carbs, like simple sugar you are getting from simple carbohydrate you are getting from the glucose itself, okay? So it's again the sugar molecules. So these disaccharides will again convert it back into the monosaccharides, to its raw form glucose, okay? Regardless of the sugar you are consuming, it has to be break down into glucose to be used by your body for energy expenditure, you know? Yeah. So this is your simple carbohydrates. Simple carbohydrate is not that bad unless it is coming from outside processed food sources, like, okay, if you are taking some of the brownies, cookies, okay, the sugar you are getting from those brownies and cookies are likely to be much more unhealthy compared to the simple sugar we're getting from the white rice, okay? So white rice is actually simple carbohydrates, but I mean it would likely to get into your bloodstream a little bit faster than the complex carbohydrate, but you are likely to get other nutrients like fiber in it, right? But when we are taking candies, sugar candies, cookies, brownies, when nothing get anything but only the sugar, okay? So this is pretty harmful when we are talking of simple carbohydrates. So simple carbohydrates is to be taken up to the limit unless it is till the time it is coming from the natural food sources, okay? So you could avoid as much as you could at your end of consuming those processed simple carbohydrates. So let's dive into what is complex carbohydrates. Complex carbohydrates are the carbohydrates that are coming from multiple glucose molecules, okay? I mean, there are polysaccharides, okay? More than one glucose molecules. Abundant amount of glucose molecules. The chain of glucose molecule, okay? Longer chain of glucose molecules. These are your polysaccharides, right? So it comprises of your starch, fiber and sugar also, but it is not going to spike up your blood sugar level to the roof. The window would be I mean it can just get burst off. It'll gradually burst off. But in case of simple carbohydrates, it burst off like the graph would be like exponential compared to the complex carbohydrates, which is kind of linear growth, okay? So which would give you have an assumption of being full, okay, which would make you full for longer compared to simple carbohydrates. Let's say, for instance, you are hitting the gym, and prior of heading to the gym, you are taking simple carbs. You might be depleted during that heavy, intense workout. While if you are replacing that with the complex carbohydrates, actually you have to take it before a couple of hours before, because you have to digest and then it has to be metabolized and the energy has to be come during your workout. So you have to, when we are taking complex carbohydrates, we have to take a bit earlier, okay, so that it would sustain those heavy, rigorous, heavy duty training, okay, that you call. So that is the benefit of complex carbohydrates over simple carbohydrates. And if we are talking about the glycemic index, what is the glycemic index is? Glycemic index is nothing but your blood sugar level, and there is a count of this blood sugar level, okay? I mean, there are different types of food sources, and which food sources has the optimum role of your blood sugar level to be picking up. Okay, so the last index is 100 for the typical glucose. If we are getting anything which is comprised of entirely glucose, then that marker is 100. So it is likely to get your blood sugar level to 100. Okay, since glucose is a simple polysaccharide, right? It's a monosaccharides, right? Sorry, it's a monosaccharide, so it's getting into the bloodstream in no time. So your insulin would be spiked. I mean, blood sugar level would be spiked. Okay, which would then prevail the type 2 diabetes conditions. Okay, because in a response to that, your insulin would get those blood sugar level pushed to your cells, and in that process we could literally burn down more sugar so that you would be have with less sugars, so your low sugar conditions could be there, right? Because insulin has forcefully moved those extra sugar particles, and in that way, in that process, it takes actually more sugar particles or sugar particles into the cell, so you are less depleted. It has not been maintained to the maintenance level, right? So make sure you're getting good complex carbohydrates. And we're talking about what is glycogen. Glycogen is nothing. I mean, glycemic index is nothing but this profiling, right? So if you are getting any carbohydrate, is completely comprised of glucose, so it's likely to have 100 count of this glycemic index. So it is pretty bad for your system. And complex carbohydrates has significantly low number of glycemic index value. So the lesser will be the glycemic index value, the lesser will be the blood sugar level. So it will be great for your system. And simple carbohydrates are likely to have more glycemic index value. So we would always opt for low index glycemic index food sources like complex carbohydrates. Okay. So that's it for you. That's it for today, guys. We would see you on the later in a later episode. Okay. So until then, bye bye. Subscribe to my channel. Like, turn that post notification on. Okay. Bye. We'll see you next time.